Hello, in this video I will talk about the gaming platform HypeHype. It's a platform like TikTok but for games. This is quite a self-contained platform, meaning it already includes everything necessary. It has an engine where games are directly developed. A games catalog, personal player accounts, comments, likes, subscriptions, everything. This is a kind of ecosystem, roughly speaking. The platform is currently in early access and is available only in some countries. It works on various devices, so even from a phone, any user can log in and register, create a game and upload it. There's no need to build anything, upload anywhere, or go through moderation. The platform has two features. For some, they might be a plus, for others a minus. The first is that for each game, the statistics are completely public. So anyone can check the statistics of any game, including how much it has earned. And the second feature is that the source code of any game is also publicly available. So anyone can take any game from the catalog, make a so-called remix, introduce changes, whether drastic or minor, and release it as a new game. Let's open the project tests. Games here are developed using visual programming. So you can't open an integrated development environment and code the entire game. Everything is constructed with what are called nodes. The platform already has a built-in asset store, which contains a large number of different models, music, sounds, effects, and some pre-made logic. A lot, if not most, if not all games from the catalog are made using these assets. Let's add an object. This is how the editor looks. Here we can run and see how our game works. The same can be done with a phone. Here is a basic entity. These are objects, 3D objects, some sprites. These are the objects that the player directly sees in the game. When we select an object, we can edit its various properties. Position, rotation, scale, and various properties of other components, such as physical properties. Let's add another object. Objects can be kind of combine. Using this button, we can drag and point like this, and then the white cube becomes a child object of the green cube. The parent is highlighted in blue, and all child elements are highlighted in red. And if we perform any manipulations with the parent, it will accordingly affect all the child objects. Now, to remove this link, first we'll look right here in the hierarchy window when we select an object, and all its child objects will be visible here. So you can also view the structure this way. To remove this link, just click on this button and select Detouch. Also, there is a so-called system of reusables here. If someone develops a game in Unity, there it is called prefabs. For example, if we have some level, and on this level there are identical objects. If we suddenly want to change something in these objects, and for example change the color, it will only change for one. If we want to make changes in one place and have it affect all identical objects, we need to make the object reusable. Accordingly, all reusables are displayed in the Build tab, Build Reusables. We'll delete these objects. Here, you can choose a reusable and create many of them. You can also create them, of course, using logic with nodes. Such objects have a special icon indicating that it's a reusable object. And here, a so-called component appears. This means that this object is called the cube, which we created earlier. Now, if we change a color, for example, it changes on every instance of this object. And thus, all the game logic is created using nodes. Nodes are also special objects, roughly speaking. They are also located in the 3D space. But the only difference is that if we start the game, for example, like this, we launch it and we don't see these nodes in the game. They are only used for creating the game logic itself. But they have this kind of the property called execute is the so-called node launch, meaning the node itself does not operate in the background on its own. We can execute it by checking this box here, for example, and it will execute at the start. We can also check the box for always, and the node will execute continuously. Just as an example, for now, we're not delving into the actual node. It's a force node that adds physical force to an object. We'll just specify that it should act on our cube, and it should start with a force of 5, directed upward along the y-axis. We start the game, and it doesn't work because first, for the cube, you need to select the physical properties. There are 3 types. The object can be immovable, it can be dynamic, or it can also be kinematic. And you can even remove the physics component from the object entirely, in which case no effect will be applied to the object. We need to set it to dynamic so that this force node can apply influence on the cube. So we launched it, and the node executed once, applying force to the cube. He's here. Not every node has such parameters. Execution, for example, like on start and continuous execution. Just as an example, let's add a number node that contains a number. For instance, it has a parameter for startup execution only, but it doesn't have a flag for constant execution. That's a slight distinction. And accordingly, all this logic is built using nodes, and these nodes are connected to each other and to these visual objects using what are called links. And these links can also be of three different types. The first type of link is a green dashed line. It is a link that connects a node to some object. Now let's add a node as an example, for instance, executor. This is a node that allows you to control this execution. On the left side of the node, we have everything that comes into a node. Yes, these are the so-called input parameters. And on the right, these are the output parameters, which are what something comes into the node, it executes, and it has some outputs. This specific node has only one output when it has executed. But later, we will look at various other nodes, each of which has its own input and output parameters. If, for example, we enable the force node not to start at the beginning. By the way, this little red icon indicates whether the node starts on its own at the beginning. If we turn it off and start the game, nothing happens accordingly. We have an executor node, which we set to execute at the start, and we want it to pass the logic forward to the next force node, so that the force node will execute. And for this, we simply need to connect the output event to the input event of the next node with the execute field. It's essentially used to launch this node and execute it. We can check everything works if we set it to always here, meaning this node will constantly execute, and this event will also trigger. Accordingly, a force will continually act on our cube, increasing, and it will fly away. Here we already see the second type of links. These are called push links, and they push something from one node to another. There can be different values, but in this case it's just kind of events, meaning that when this node executes, the action proceeds further, moving along the chain to another node. And this link is marked in red color, which means that during the transfer, from this node to that node, you also need to additionally execute this node, meaning to call the method execute, because let's do another example with the same number. Thus, in this case, the output of this node already contains a value. For example, we can specify a certain value for this node, meaning the purpose of this node is to store a number. And then we can pass this number to other nodes. For example, we take it, drag it from the output, and then drag it into the amount field. Here we click for now to convert the link, and we see that this link is red again. It's a push link. That means when this node is executed, its value will get transferred. will be transferred to the next node. And it will trigger this node by calling the execute method on it. Here, we enable this node so that it starts up and it displays this icon. And we start it and see that the cube has already jumped because it received a force of 10 as specified here. Although this shows 5, the value is overwritten by the value from this node. And this push link can be in two states. Red color is when it transfers the value and additionally triggers this node for execution. This link also, it is displayed right here. If we click here, there is a flag that indicates whether we need to run the second one or not. If we remove it, the link turns gray, and now when this node starts, its value will be set in the field amount, but the force node will not execute, meaning nothing will happen and the amount will simply be stored in this node. This number that we transferred, and also there is a third type of link. By the way, links can be deleted like this. We click here and select the trash icon. There's a third type of link. Let's turn off this number node so it doesn't execute at the start, but it has a value of 10 assigned to it. Let's set up. The node force starts at launch. If we don't overwrite the amount, the cube jumps a bit. And the third type of link is when, like this we do, and the link becomes yellow and kind of. It also looks like an arrow. I think this type of link is called readable. This node, when executed, takes the value. From the node with which we linked it, meaning the connection is the other way around, not from this node, from the right, but from this node, it reads the current value from the node it is linked to. Here, in the amount field, we see that the value is taken from the node, specifically from the output parameter of the number node. We check and the cube immediately jumps to 10. This pertains to the links and connections between nodes and objects. Theta. So it turns out that if that is to say, a complex game, a complicated game, will naturally contain a lot of different nodes with various connections. And such an organization is not always convenient. For this reason, here there's a mechanism called containers. Containers are used for organizing nodes in the space. I selected the nodes, clicked on the container icon, and a container was created, which I can now drag and position in the three-dimensional space. All the nodes move together with it. I can name this container, and I can hide the internal logic here so it doesn't interfere. We've implemented some logic we don't need. Each time we just hide it and it doesn't get in the way. Meanwhile, a container doesn't mean that the nodes are somehow encapsulated and have no access outside. That is, the nodes can still be connected to any objects or to other nodes from different containers. This node is currently in a container. To remove it, we can press the remove button and it will be taken out of the container. Similarly, we can also place it into the container by moving it like this, and the node will be added inside. So, don't forget to save the project. Here, in the top right corner, there's a save button, which also shows the number of changes made. If you don't save, there's a chance you might lose your work, so save frequently. There is some sort of built-in autosave mechanism under the hood. So if, let's say, the app crashes, it will most likely allow you to load an autosave upon startup. When we press the save button, we go to the game's card page, where all the information we can specify is located. Here, there's the game icon, which we can either upload or take a screenshot directly in our project. Here we can fill in the title, description, and specify categories. Allow comments for games. And there are two buttons. The first one is the save button. This means the project is not published publicly yet. And this button save, it just saves a draft, a rough version, just so that worked, saved, then the next day came back and worked again, saved again. And the post button kind of publishes the game and makes it publicly available. And this unlisted parameter affects whether the game will appear in the general catalog. If the unlisted checkbox is ticked, then the project will be available publicly, but only via link. If we remove this checkmark, the project will appear in the general catalog, allowing any player to find it, either by seeing it in a category or simply through a search. See, enter the game, actually play, leave a comment, like, share, and all that. That's what I wanted to cover in this video. In the next video, clearly, this isn't everything. There are many different nodes in various categories that already allow you to create quite complex, intricate games. You can check the catalog, and additionally, there are a number of different functionalities that can be explained. And in the next video, we can examine this in more detail, exploring some of the nodes right, whether you're interested or not, and what you'd like to learn. Thank you. Bye.